I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, typing out my life for strangers on the internet. My wife, Jessica, and I have been married for 9 years, and for most of it, I thought we had the perfect life. Sure, we had the usual arguments over bills, whose turn it was to clean, or whether I left the garage door open again, but nothing serious. Or so I thought. Lately, though, Jessica's been different. It started small. She stopped laughing at my dumb jokes, the ones she used to pretend were funny. Then, she began dressing up more, even for errands. "It's just for me," she'd say with a tight smile, when I asked why she suddenly needed designer clothes for a trip to the grocery store. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then came the late nights. At first, it was book club, then work dinners, then some vague explanation about reconnecting with old friends. The thing is, Jessica's always hated people. Her words, not mine. She never cared about networking or catching up with anyone. So this sudden social butterfly act felt off. The kicker came last week. I'd woken up early to grab coffee before work. Her phone, which she always keeps locked and face down, was buzzing like crazy. Half asleep, I saw a message flash across the screen. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again tonight." I froze. My chest tightened, and I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Jessica never left her phone unattended. But there it was, taunting me on the kitchen counter. Before I could decide what to do, I heard her footsteps. She walked in, still in her robe, and saw me standing there like a deer in headlights. "Morning," she said, her voice too casual. Her eyes darted to the phone, and her smile faltered. "What's up?" "Nothing," I mumbled, stepping away from the counter. My mind was racing, and I knew I needed to play it cool. For now. Something was definitely going on, and I was going to find out. The rest of that morning, I couldn't focus on anything. I replayed that message in my head 1,000 times. Last night was incredible. Who the hell was she meeting? Was it someone from work? One of these supposed friends she was reconnecting with? That evening, I decided to keep my cool and observe. When Jessica came home, she was cheerful. Too cheerful. She kissed me on the cheek, cooked dinner, which she rarely did these days, and even asked about my day. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and yell, "What the hell is going on?" Instead, I played along. "Good day at work?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Busy," she said, avoiding my eyes as she served herself a small portion of pasta. "You know how it is." I nodded, studying her. She looked radiant. Her skin seemed to glow, and there was a lightness to her that I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't because of me. I knew that much. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I decided to investigate. I crept downstairs and grabbed her phone. The screen was locked, of course, and I didn't know the code. My heart was racing as I held it, wondering if this was even worth it. Then I remembered the message. I had to know. That's when I noticed her laptop sitting on the couch. Unlike her phone, Jessica's computer wasn't password protected. I opened it and saw her email inbox on the screen. My hands were trembling as I scrolled. Most of the emails were boring: receipts, newsletters, work updates. But then I saw one. The subject line read, "This weekend." It was from someone named Evan S. I clicked on it. The email was brief but damning. "Evan, can't wait to see you again. Are you still okay with Friday night? I'll book the suite just in case." She hadn't replied yet, but she had marked it as read. My blood ran cold. A suite? Friday night? My mind spiraled. Was this just some fling? Or was it something deeper? I closed the laptop and put everything back as I'd found it. My first instinct was to confront her right then and there, but I stopped myself. I needed more. If she was cheating, I wanted to know exactly how deep this betrayal went. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her lie to my face. The week crawled by, every interaction with Jessica dripping with tension. She acted normal, or rather what had become her version of normal. She was distant yet pleasant, like someone trying to keep up appearances. Meanwhile, I felt like a volcano ready to erupt. Friday finally came, and Jessica was in an unusually good mood. She came home from work earlier than usual, changed into a sleek black dress, and did her makeup in a way that felt too glamorous for dinner with the girls. which was her excuse for the night. "Don't wait up," she said, smiling as she grabbed her purse. "We might go out for drinks after." I forced a smile. "Have fun." The moment the door closed behind her, I sprang into action. I had a plan, a risky one, but I was desperate. Earlier that week, I'd put a GPS tracker in her car. It wasn't hard to install, and the app on my phone showed her exact location. I watched as the blinking dot moved across town, stopping at a high-end hotel downtown. My stomach churned. It wasn't some casual meetup. She was heading straight to him. I jumped in my car and drove, my mind racing. What was I even going to do? Confront her? Storm into the hotel? I didn't know, but I couldn't just sit at home and let this happen. When I arrived, I parked across the street and waited, keeping an eye on the entrance. After about 20 minutes, I saw her. Jessica walked out of her car, laughing with a man in a tailored suit. He had his arm around her waist as they entered the hotel together. The sight of it made my blood boil. This wasn't some casual fling. There was intimacy in the way they moved, the way she leaned into him. I stayed in my car, watching and stewing. A part of me wanted to march in there and make a scene, but I stopped myself. I needed proof, solid, undeniable proof. Pulling out my phone, I snapped a few pictures of them walking into the hotel. Then I waited. Hours passed, and I felt like a fool sitting there in the dark. Around midnight, the hotel door opened again. Jessica and the man stepped out, looking disheveled but happy. They lingered by her car, kissing passionately before she finally drove off. I stayed long enough to watch him head back into the hotel, then followed her home at a safe distance. When I walked through the door, she was already upstairs, pretending to be asleep. Lying there in bed next to her, I felt something break inside me. I'd seen enough to know this wasn't a one-time thing. This was planned, deliberate, and deceitful. This wasn't just cheating. This was betrayal. The next morning, Jessica acted like nothing had happened. She hummed while making coffee and chatted about weekend plans. I played along, nodding at the right times, but inside, I was seething. I needed to know more about this Evan S., the man she'd been with, if I wanted to confront her. And I knew I would. I needed every detail. While she was in the shower, I grabbed her laptop again. This time, I wasn't just skimming. I was digging. I scrolled through her inbox, her sent folder, and even her archived emails. Finally, I struck gold. Subject: "Thank you for last night." From Evan S. Message: "I don't know how you keep it all together, Jessica. Your husband has no idea what he's missing. I feel like the luckiest man alive every time I'm with you. Same time next week." My hands shook as I read the words. Not only was this guy sleeping with my wife, but he also seemed to take pride in it. Arrogant bastard. I copied his email address and searched for him online. It didn't take long to find him. A LinkedIn profile popped up with his smug face staring back at me. Evan Sullivan, VP of Marketing for a local tech company. Married, 2 kids. Married. That was interesting. I clicked through his profile, noting every detail I could. The man was polished, well-dressed, and successful. It wasn't hard to see why Jessica might have been drawn to him. But knowing who he was wasn't enough. I needed leverage. Digging further, I found his Facebook profile. It was public, rookie mistake. I scrolled through his photos, noting the smiling family pictures, the loving husband captions, the perfect suburban life. The hypocrisy made me sick. Then I found it, his wife's profile. Her name was Amanda Sullivan, and from the looks of it, she was as unsuspecting as I'd been. I jotted down her contact information but didn't message her. Not yet. First, I needed to confront Jessica. Later that evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I couldn't take it anymore. "Jessica," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Who's Evan?" She froze. It was subtle, just a slight tensing of her shoulders, but I caught it. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone too casual. "I saw you last night," I said, leaning forward. "At the hotel. With him." Her face turned pale. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but then her expression hardened. "You were spying on me?" she snapped, her voice rising. That's insane, Daniel. I can't believe you'd do something like that. Don't turn this around on me, I said, my voice like steel. I saw you. I have pictures. I know everything. Jessica stared at me, her eyes narrowing. Fine, she said finally. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing Evan. But you don't get to play the victim here, Daniel. Do you even realize how distant you've been? How much you've neglected me? I laughed bitterly. So it's my fault you're screwing another man? That's creative. She glared at me but didn't respond. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the TV. This ends now, I said, standing up. I'm not going to let you make a fool out of me. You tell him it's over or I will. Jessica crossed her arms, her lips curling into a smirk. And what are you going to do? Tell his wife. Go ahead, Daniel. Blow up everyone's life. See where that gets you. Her arrogance stunned me. She wasn't even sorry. As I walked away, I made a silent vow. If she thought this was the end, she was dead wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying her smirk over and over. The nerve she had to deflect, to blame me, to act like this was something I deserved. When she finally fell asleep, I got up and went to the kitchen, pouring myself a drink. My mind raced with ideas, but one thing was crystal clear. Jessica wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. The next morning, I began my plan. First, I reached out to Evan's wife, Amanda. I wasn't impulsive about it. I carefully drafted an email. I attached the photos I'd taken of Jessica and Evan at the hotel, along with screenshots of his emails to her. Subject: You deserve to know. Message:
Y Amanda.
I'm sorry to bring this to you, but I feel you should know what's been happening. My wife, Jessica, has been having an affair with your husband, Evan. I've attached evidence. I don't know if this is a complete shock to you or if you've had suspicions, but I thought you deserved the truth. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to discuss this further. I hit send and sat back, my heart pounding. If nothing else, Evan's perfect little life was about to implode. But that was just step one. Next, I decided to dig deeper into Evan's world. I contacted a private investigator I'd worked with on a legal case years ago. I gave him Evan's details and asked for everything: financial records, property ownership, even his work history. I wanted to know who this man was and what skeletons he might have in his closet. By the time Jessica got home from work, I was calm, too calm. How was your day? I asked as she walked in, my tone cheerful. She eyed me suspiciously. Fine. Why are you being so nice? Just trying to be a good husband, I said with a smile. Jessica rolled her eyes and went upstairs to change. She had no idea what was coming. No clue that her world was about to crumble. The next day, I got a call from Amanda. Her voice was shaking, a mix of anger and heartbreak. Is this Daniel? She asked. Yes, I said. I assume you saw the email? I did, she said, her voice cracking. I don't even know what to say. How long has this been going on? At least a few months, I replied. But I think it might be longer. There was silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her tone was colder, more determined. What are you planning to do? I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. But I'm not letting this slide. Good, she said. Because neither am I. We agreed to stay in touch and share any new information. Amanda was clearly as furious as I was, and I couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. If Jessica and Evan wanted to play games, they were about to learn the hard way that we weren't pawns. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from the investigator. Got something interesting on Evan Sullivan. Call me when you're ready. It was time to move to the next phase of my plan. When I called the investigator, he wasted no time diving into the dirt. You were right to be suspicious, he said. Your guy, Evan Sullivan, has a few skeletons in his closet. I gripped the phone tightly. Go on. For starters, he's been using company funds to pay for his little extracurricular activities. Hotel bookings, expensive dinners, gifts, all of it billed to his corporate card. Either he's incredibly stupid, or he thinks he's untouchable. A crooked smirk formed on my face. What else? Well, here's the kicker. His company, Brightcore Tech, has a strict morals clause in their contracts for executives. If this gets out, he's not just looking at a ruined marriage. He's looking at unemployment. My mind raced. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about dismantling everything Evan thought he could keep hidden. What about his wife? I asked. She's squeaky clean, the investigator replied. She runs a nonprofit, no red flags there. But I did find something interesting. Evan recently transferred a large sum of money into a private account. Could be preparing for fallout, or maybe he's hiding assets. Send me everything you have, I said. Already done, he replied. Check your email. I hung up and opened my laptop, poring over the files. There it was in black and white, receipts, emails, even timestamps of his hotel stays with Jessica. The investigator had gone above and beyond, cross-referencing the data with Jessica's credit card charges. It was undeniable. That night I called Amanda again. I've got more proof, I said, and I think you'll find it useful. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Amanda looked exhausted, but there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I handed her a folder with everything the investigator had dug up. This is all legit? She asked, flipping through the pages. Absolutely, I said. Evan's been funding his affair on the company's dime. If you want to hit him where it hurts, this is how you do it. Amanda nodded slowly, a grim determination settling over her. And Jessica? I've got plans for her, I said, my voice cold. Amanda closed the folder and looked at me. They deserve whatever's coming to them. I couldn't agree more. That evening, I began phase 2 of my revenge. Using the investigator's intel, I sent an anonymous email to Brightcore Tech's HR department. Subject: Concerned Citizen, Employee Misconduct. Message: Dear Brightcore Management, it has come to my attention that one of your executives, Evan Sullivan, has been misusing company funds for personal purposes. I've attached documentation proving that he has been charging hotel stays, meals, and other expenses unrelated to business. I trust you will take the necessary action. Attached were the receipts and transaction details. If they didn't act on this, they'd be negligent. Next, I created an anonymous Instagram account and uploaded the photos of Jessica and Evan at the hotel. I didn't tag anyone, but the caption read, "Nothing stays hidden forever." The dominoes were in place. Now I just had to wait for them to fall. By Monday morning, things were in motion. I could feel it. Jessica left for work as usual, still oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was Amanda. They fired him, she said, her voice cold and matter-of-fact. What happened? I asked, leaning back in my chair, a satisfied grin forming. HR confronted him with the expense reports, she explained. He tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was airtight. They gave him the choice to resign quietly or face a public termination. He resigned. I let out a low whistle. Good. That's not all, Amanda added. I served him divorce papers this morning. He didn't even see it coming. Her tone was sharp, but there was a hint of sadness too. I couldn't blame her. It was one thing to want revenge, but it didn't erase the pain of betrayal. Let me know if you need anything, I said. Same to you, she replied. Let's finish what we started. When I got home that evening, Jessica was in a mood. She slammed the door behind her, kicked off her heels, and poured herself a glass of wine without saying a word. Tough day, I asked, feigning concern. She glared at me. You could say that. Apparently Evan got fired today. Can you believe that? Some anonymous tip about misuse of funds. It's ridiculous. I shrugged, masking my glee. Maybe he had it coming. She scoffed and downed her wine. You don't understand. This is going to make everything complicated. Complicated? I asked, raising an eyebrow. How so? Jessica hesitated, her eyes darting to the side. It's nothing. Just forget it. But I couldn't forget it. Her reaction confirmed what I already suspected. Evan wasn't just a fling. She was banking on him for something, and now that he was out of the picture, her plans were unraveling. That night, As she slept, I checked the anonymous Instagram account I'd set up. The post with the photos had started to spread. A few comments trickled in. Who is this? Scandalous. Looks like Evan Sullivan. The whispers were growing louder. The next morning, Jessica seemed distracted, checking her phone every few minutes. I knew she must have seen the post by now. Everything okay? I asked casually over breakfast. Fine, she said curtly, not meeting my eyes. I smirked inwardly. The walls were closing in, and she knew it. Later that afternoon, I got a text from Amanda. It's everywhere now. Jessica's getting dragged online. People are tagging her name. Check the comments. I opened Instagram and saw what she meant. The post had gone viral in local circles. Jessica's name was now attached to the scandal, and people weren't holding back. The captions, the memes, the scathing comments, it was brutal. When Jessica came home that evening, her face was pale. She barely spoke a word as she locked herself in the bedroom. I poured myself a drink and waited. The show was just getting started. The silence in the house was almost deafening. Jessica stayed holed up in the bedroom all night, the glow of her phone seeping through the crack beneath the door. I could only imagine the fallout she was dealing with, her perfect world crashing down around her. The next morning, she emerged, her eyes puffy from lack of sleep. She didn't meet my gaze as she grabbed her coffee and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. Rough night? I asked, hiding my amusement. She didn't answer at first, then muttered, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, I said, keeping my tone neutral. But if there's something going on, you know you can tell me. Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. Cut the crap, Daniel. I know you're enjoying this. I raised my hands defensively. Enjoying what? You've been acting weird for days. Jessica scoffed and slammed her coffee mug down. Don't play dumb. You think I don't know about the post? The photos? I leaned back, crossing my arms. Maybe you shouldn't have given people something to post about. Her face turned crimson, anger flashing in her eyes. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed. Do you know what people are saying about me? About us? Us? I laughed bitterly. Jessica, there hasn't been an us in months, maybe years. You made sure of that. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time in days, she looked small, defeated. Before she could say anything else, her phone buzzed on the table. She grabbed it quickly, glancing at the screen. Her expression hardened again. Evan? I asked mockingly. Her glare was answer enough. Without a word, she stormed back into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I picked up my phone and texted Amanda. Me. How's it going on your end? Amanda. Evan's trying to play damage control. He showed up at my house last night begging to talk. I didn't let him in. Me. Good. Don't let up. Amanda didn't need encouragement. She was as furious as I was, if not more. Together, we were methodically dismantling their lives, one piece at a time. That evening, Jessica emerged again, quieter now, but no less tense. I need to go out for a bit, she said, grabbing her purse. Where are you going? I asked, though I already knew the answer. To clear my head, she said, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, watching as she left. Once she was gone, I pulled up the GPS tracker app. Sure enough, she was heading straight for Evan's house. I debated following her but decided against it. This time I had a different plan. Instead of chasing her, I called Amanda. She's on her way to him, I said. Amanda laughed darkly. Perfect timing. I've already packed his bags and put them on the porch. I could almost hear the satisfaction in her voice. You're a genius, I said. Just doing what needs to be done, she replied. Jessica thought she could slither her way back to Evan, but Amanda was already 2 steps ahead. As I poured myself another drink, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of triumph. Jessica didn't come home until late that night. I heard the door open and her heels click against the floor as she made her way to the kitchen. I stayed on the couch, pretending to watch TV, but I was listening intently. A minute later, she appeared in the doorway, looking disheveled. Her makeup was smeared, her hair a mess. She looked like someone who had just had the worst day of their life, and I was betting she had. "How was your head-clearing session?" I asked without looking at her. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked over and slumped onto the couch across from me. "It's over," she said flatly, staring at the floor. I raised an eyebrow, finally turning to look at her. "What's over?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Evan and he's done." I couldn't help the smirk that crept across my face. "Oh, really? What happened? Did the hotel suites lose their charm?" Her head snapped up, and for a second, I thought she might yell, but then her shoulders sagged. "His wife threw him out. His company fired him. He said he's going to try to fix things with Amanda." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "So, let me get this straight. The guy you risked everything for is crawling back to his wife, and you're left with... what exactly?" Jessica's lip trembled, but she bit it, refusing to cry. "I don't need your commentary right now, Daniel." "Oh, I think you do," I said, my voice icy. "Because it's high time you face reality, Jessica. You blew up our life for a man who never had any intention of sticking around." She shot to her feet, her face red with fury. "Don't act like you're innocent in all this. You've been distant for years, treating me like an afterthought. And that gave you the right to cheat? To lie? Don't blame me for your choices, Jessica. You did this. You, not me." She stared at me, her anger giving way to something else. Fear, maybe, or regret. "What do you want me to say?" she whispered. "That I made a mistake? Fine. I made a mistake. But where do we go from here?" I laughed bitterly. "Where do we go? You're joking, right? Jessica, there is no we. Not anymore." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw genuine panic. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack," I said. "You can pack your things and figure out where you're going, because it's not going to be here." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "Don't bother. My decision's made." Jessica stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I was the one in control. But I wasn't done yet. Jessica didn't take me seriously at first. The next morning, she lingered in the kitchen like nothing had happened. She even tried to make small talk, but I wasn't having it. "I meant what I said last night," I told her, my voice calm but firm. "Start packing." She froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "You're really doing this? Do I look like I'm joking?" I shot back. She set the cup down, her hands trembling. "Where am I supposed to go, Daniel? I don't have anywhere else." "Not my problem," I said coldly. "You should have thought about that before you decided to wreck this marriage." Jessica's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let it sway me. Her manipulative tactics weren't going to work anymore. While she went upstairs to sulk, I called Amanda. "It's time," I said. Amanda didn't ask questions. She knew exactly what I meant. That afternoon, she and I met up to finalize the final stage of our plan. Using the information from the investigator, we'd crafted a timeline of the affair, complete with dates, emails, photos, and financial records. We compiled everything into a neat little packet, one copy for Jessica's employer and another for Evan's social circle. Amanda had connections, and she wasn't afraid to use them. By the time we were done, the scandal was poised to spread like wildfire. "You sure about this?" she asked as we reviewed the files one last time. "I've never been surer," I replied. The next day it began. First, the anonymous tip we sent to Jessica's boss triggered an internal investigation. Her company had a strict policy against workplace affairs, especially when they affected reputation. Within hours, Jessica's phone was blowing up with calls and emails from HR. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed at me when she came home that evening. "Nothing you didn't bring on yourself," I said, leaning back on the couch. She threw her phone on the coffee table, her face red with anger. "They're threatening to fire me. Do you have any idea what that would do to me?" I shrugged. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to play house with Evan." Jessica stared at me, her rage slowly giving way to despair. You're really trying to destroy me, aren't you? I stood, towering over her.
No, Jessica.
You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure you feel every consequence of it. The next blow came 2 days later. Amanda's contacts had done their job. The story of Evan's affair, and Jessica's role in it, was now the talk of every group chat, coffee shop, and Facebook thread in town. Jessica's name was dragged through the mud, her once pristine image reduced to a cautionary tale. I came home that evening to find her sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. She looked hollow, defeated. They fired me, she said quietly. I lost everything. I didn't respond. I simply walked past her, poured myself a drink, and went upstairs. The silence that followed was deafening. The days following Jessica's downfall were eerily quiet. She mostly stayed in the guest room, emerging only to sulk or glare at me. The woman who had once strutted around the house like she owned it now looked small, broken. But I wasn't done yet. That week, I started the divorce proceedings. I filed the papers quietly, ensuring she wouldn't see it coming. I'd already spoken to a lawyer and outlined everything. Her infidelity, the evidence I had, and the timeline to back it up. When the papers were served, Jessica's reaction was explosive. You can't be serious, she shouted, storming into the living room with the envelope in hand. I've never been more serious, I said, barely looking up from my laptop. This is a joke, she spat, throwing the papers onto the coffee table. You're really going to throw away 9 years over one mistake? I laughed bitterly. Mistake? Jessica, this wasn't some drunken one-night stand. You carried on an affair for months. You lied to my face every single day. Don't you dare call it a mistake. Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. What do you want from me? She whispered. I've already lost everything. My job, my reputation. What else is there? I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. I want you to leave. For good. This marriage is over, Jessica. The sooner you accept that, the better. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. I don't have anywhere to go, she said weakly. That's not my problem, I replied coldly. The next few days were tense. Jessica started packing her things, moving slowly as though dragging out the inevitable. Every time I saw her, I felt a mix of anger and relief. She'd burned our life to the ground, but I was finally free of her lies. Meanwhile, Amanda and I kept in touch. She was handling her side of things with ruthless efficiency, finalizing her divorce from Evan and ensuring he faced as much fallout as possible. I heard Jessica's moving out, Amanda said during one of our calls. Yeah, I replied. It's about time. Good, she said. Let her rot. She deserves it. I agreed. Jessica had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But as much as I wanted to close this chapter of my life, I knew there was still one more thing I needed to do. Jessica finished packing a week later. She dragged her suitcases to the front door without a word, her face pale and hollow. So, this is it, she said, barely meeting my eyes. This is it, I replied, arms crossed. For a moment, it looked like she might say something more. An apology, maybe? But instead, she just sighed and opened the door. As she stepped outside, I spoke one last time. You brought this on yourself, Jessica. Don't forget that. She flinched but didn't look back. The door closed behind her, and for the first time in weeks, the house was silent. I felt nothing. After Jessica left, I focused on finalizing the divorce. My lawyer assured me the evidence of her affair would ensure I came out on top. Meanwhile, Amanda updated me on her progress. Evan had moved into a shabby apartment, and she was already pushing for full custody of their kids. He's miserable, she told me over the phone. It's perfect. Good, I said. They deserve it. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally regaining control of my life. With Jessica gone, the house felt different. Lighter. I spent the first few days clearing out everything that reminded me of her. Photos, clothes, even the stupid coffee mugs she loved. I threw it all out. Amanda and I met for coffee to celebrate the progress. To freedom, she said, raising her cup. To freedom, I echoed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled genuinely. The divorce was finalized within weeks. Jessica didn't contest, probably knowing she had no leg to stand on. I got the house, most of our savings, and most importantly, my peace. Amanda and I stayed in touch for a while, bonded by the shared chaos we endured. Eventually, we drifted apart, but there were no hard feelings. As for Jessica and Evan, last I heard, they weren't speaking. Both had lost everything: careers, marriages, and respect. I, on the other hand, had gained something invaluable: clarity. Looking back, I realized revenge wasn't about hurting them. It was about reclaiming my power. And now, I'm free to start again, and this time on my own terms.